Christian Horner has finally had a change of heart. The Red Bull team principal now agrees with Helmut Marko that Sergio Perez should fight harder if he wants to keep racing for the Milton Keynes-based team. And with Lewis Hamilton closing in, the Mexican driver has to pick it up sooner rather than later. That and your weekly update on the Andretti situation in today's video. So keep watching. Taking a look at the competitive landscape within rival intra-team dynamics, Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull Racing, believes that Sergio Perez needs to rediscover his top form in order to substantially close the performance gap with Max Verstappen. The F1 2023 titles are now secured for Red Bull, a dominant campaign having led to the early capture of the Constructors' title, while Verstappen stormed to a third Drivers' Championship, though it is not all smooth sailing at Red Bull right now. While one side of the garage is thriving, the other side is a case of anything but, with Perez seemingly crumbling. Perez has endured consecutive disappointing races. In the most recent race in Qatar, he incurred 3 5-second penalties for exceeding track limits, ultimately finishing in 10th place. Red Bull anticipates increased competition in the upcoming season, as Horner addresses the McLaren duo of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, as well as the lineups of Mercedes and Ferrari. He observes that the teammates are fairly evenly matched. Consequently, they cannot afford for Perez to continue trailing Verstappen by such a considerable margin. Horner, speaking to Sky F1, commented on the first lap collision involving Mercedes teammates Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. He said, "The other teams are working as a pair. Sometimes that becomes a bit confrontational, as we saw today. But you know Mercedes, it's very tight between the pair. Ferrari is very tight between their pair. Oscar, what a great job he's doing as a rookie, very tight with Lando. We really need Checo to get into that window because it's not this year so much, but certainly next year we need him to be firing on all cylinders." Even amid growing speculation that Perez might not complete his Red Bull contract, Horner reiterated his commitment to having Perez on board for the 2024 F1 season, which marks the final year of his current agreement. But considering the persistent links between Norris and the Red Bull seat, Horner also mentioned Piastri as a potential candidate, along with several AlphaTauri options, including Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, and Liam Lawson. This indicates that Red Bull has a range of alternatives at their disposal if Perez fails to regain his form. Nevertheless, the team is focused on providing him with the necessary support to turn his career around for the time being. Horner said, "Well, Lando, obviously he's under contract. Oscar, you'd be saying as well, he's under contract as well. So all those drivers under contract, we've got AlphaTauri as well, but we have a contract with Sergio, and we're not seeing the best of Sergio. We need to unpick what it is that's causing this slump in form for him, and we're going to support him as much as we can to achieve that." With just 5 races left in the season, Perez currently holds 224 points, and despite having the fastest car on the grid, Hamilton only trails by a 30-point margin. Hamilton has significantly reduced Perez's lead, narrowing the gap from 55 points after the Italian Grand Prix to just 30 points over the course of 3 races. Given this rate of progress, it's not out of the realm of possibility to consider Hamilton surpassing Perez for the runner-up position in the championship standings. This prospect gains weight as Perez's form has dipped once again, with him only amassing a mere 5 points in the past 3 races. Mark Webber highlights that the potential for unpredictable weather conditions, especially as Formula One heads to the United States, could create an opportunity for Hamilton. He told Channel 4, "Well, when we talk about weather, that's going to be an interesting one with Brazil and Mexico, and once we get out of these UAE countries, as that's where Sergio is still struggling, these mixed weather conditions. He's lost a lot of points throughout the year, of course. That's where Lewis is just going to be relentless. That'll be pretty brutal if he tracks him down. But," he added, "I think Sergio will still nip it." With the Andretti Formula One team now officially endorsed, will the FIA and President Mohammed Ben Sulayem take a step back from the ongoing debate around the new teams, allowing F1 to independently assess whether Andretti deserves a grid slot? It was an improbable scenario from the start. This is due to the escalating significance of the new team discussion and the ongoing FIA F1 friction, and the strong wave of fan enthusiasm for Andretti, along with other potential entrants, joining a larger grid. Given this context, it seemed unlikely that Ben Sulayem would pass up the opportunity to reiterate the FIA's strong support for this expansion. Ben Sulayem didn't hold back when he sat down for an interview with Reuters over the Qatar Grand Prix weekend. He seized the opportunity to emphasize the audacity of opposing an American-based, manufacturer-backed initiative that had received full approval from the FIA. Sulayem, alluding to Andretti's collaboration with Cadillac, had this to say: "Saying no to a team which has been approved by the FIA, it's very hard to say no. The FIA should be asking, begging OEMs, car manufacturers, to come in. We should not just say no to them." He articulated it as his aspiration to have one American team backed by an OEM, with a power unit and a driver from the US, and eventually he'd seek to replicate this model in China. Some have proposed that it might be more prudent for Andretti and Cadillac to acquire an existing F1 team. It's worth acknowledging that such decisions don't fall under the purview of the FIA. To be fair, Andretti had previously made attempts to purchase Sauber and has expressed interest in acquiring Haas. Sulayem said, "You cannot force Andretti GM to buy another team just because they, current team owners, want to sell. I won't mention names, but they were after me to go on and convince GM to do that. It's not my job. I was not elected to do that. I am not a broker." As for concerns about tracks and facilities being too small to accommodate more teams, it's a valid point. But if you've noticed, they've managed to make room for an additional team for the Brad Pitt movie. This suggests that creative solutions and adaptations can be made when necessary. Sulayem talked about this potential pain point, saying that, "We are allowed to have 12 teams. Some of the teams said, 'Oh, it will be crowded.' Really? We're already running a Hollywood team with us." On top of that, let's not forget the ongoing push led by Liberty for calendar expansion, a move that many within the paddock feel is stretching personal resources unfairly. Sulayem stands firmly against this, going as far as to say that the sport should actually have fewer races. He said, "The circuits are supposed to have enough garages and space for 12 teams. I think the number of races is too much rather than the number of teams. We need more teams and fewer races." Regardless of the broader advantages or disadvantages of admitting more teams into Formula One, it's evident that this issue has become a pawn in the ongoing power struggle between the FIA and F1, each vying for control over the championship. "We are not a service provider. We own the championship. We leased it. We are the landlord, so that has to be respected also. My intention was never to embarrass or to put someone in a corner, Liberty or OFM. I am here for the spirit of the sport. In the current structure, the FIA lacks the authority to compel Formula One to greenlight Andretti's entry. At the moment, statements like those made by Ben Sulayem can only serve to intensify the pressure on F1 and reassure the substantial segment of the F1 fan base advocating for additional teams, especially Andretti, that the FIA supports their cause. The worst-case scenarios loom, such as Andretti gaining FIA approval but failing to secure a commercial agreement with F1, or potential legal disputes arising. These possibilities were discussed in detail by Mark Hughes on the Race F1 podcast last week. He explained that, if the FIA has granted permission to run, there's a question whether the team could in theory run without a commercial agreement in place. That's not altogether clear, and if it did happen like that, it would be horrifically complex, not to mention financially horrible for Andretti. But without a commercial agreement, FOM wouldn't, for example, be able to show the Andretti cars on TV images. So there could be a tit-for-tat escalation along those lines. That's just the start of it. This could drag on for a long time, quite considerably through the law courts. So, will Lewis Hamilton catch up to Sergio Perez before the season ends? Tell us what you think in the comment section down below. And, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thanks for watching.